Good evening. We're going to dive right in. We are learning about the story of Judas Iscariot as studied and detailed by Hyam Maccoby in his book, Judas Iscariot and the Myth of Jewish Evil. I'm just going to jump right in and we'll discuss as we go on. Still in chapter 1. It may be noticed already that the Christian story is being treated here on the level of myth rather than history or fact. That is his argument, that the story of Judas Iscariot never happened. It was created. It was devised for polemical and political purposes. And it functions as a myth rather than a historical fact, because he proves how it can't be a historical fact. Judas Iscariot appears in it not because there actually was such a person, but because such a person is needed for the story to have its maximum psychological and spiritual impact. We will be showing that the story of Judas Iscariot is almost entirely fictional. But this does not reduce the story to triviality by any means. Its status as myth is unaffected. In other words, it still functions to determine people's emotions, ideas, belief systems, even if it didn't factually happen. And again, people do believe that it was real. It is a real story. It was a real person, so we'll get to that. It is the task of the inquirer, that's us, to explore both the power and purpose of the myth and to understand the historical reality on which it was based. The contrast between reality and myth may itself become the subject of useful reflection. Okay. Here's the story. What is the story? We're gonna see. Here it is. I only learned this in the early 2000s when I was studying religion at NYU in a master's program. Before that, I had no idea about this figure. I had no clue. I was like, wow. I did not study Christian literature and the Gospels or the Quran until I got to that program. And then I read everything and I went down the rabbit holes, Okay, here's the story. Let us first have before us the familiar story of Judas's betrayal as it exists in the minds of lay readers of the Gospels. And also, what clergy put out to their people. Judas Iscariot was one of Jesus's disciples. We are not told anything about his family or background or the meaning of his second name, Iscariot, or how he came to follow Jesus. He is not to be confused with another disciple of Jesus, also called Judas, but not Iscariot, who remained loyal. Judas Iscariot was appointed by Jesus to be the treasurer of the group of disciples and held the communal purse. Money Jews, bad betrayal. Money Jews, bad betrayal. You see the theme, right? But he had an avaricious nature and used his position both to cheat for his own advantage and to adopt a stingy attitude toward charitable expenditure. Really bad guy. Finally, his avarice led him into treachery, to which he was tempted by Satan. Now, just as an aside, Satan is a Christian, is really more in Christian theology. Judaism, the only time Satan, this character Satan, comes in is in the book of Job. And he's more like a challenger, like a bad challenger, but he doesn't really have power of, I was saying him, whatever, it doesn't have power of its own. It's like an angel kind of, it's like a mischievous angel. That's really, we don't have Satan in Judaism really. This is a whole Christian thing. which is interesting. He approached the chief enemies of Jesus, meaning Judas Iscariot, being like tempted by Satan, which within the Christian tradition, which is like a, more powerful, I guess, I don't know, we'll move on. He approached the chief enemies of Jesus, the leaders of the priests, and offered to betray Jesus to them for money. The sum of 30 pieces of silver was agreed and paid to him, and Judas awaited a suitable opportunity for betrayal. Judas was present at the Last Supper with other disciples. Jesus, however, was aware that Judas Iscariot intended to betray him. It's kind of interesting. And showed his awareness at the Last Supper by handing Judas a sop of bread dipped in wine, saying that the person receiving this would betray him. I always laugh at that. Okay. Judas then left the table and went to meet the priests. After the meal, Jesus with the other disciples went to the Garden of Gethsemane, where he spent the night in prayer. Here Judas came, leading Jesus' enemies, and identified Jesus by giving him a kiss. Whereupon Jesus was arrested and led away in his imprisonment, trial, and execution. Judas Iscariot, however, was overcome with remorse, returned the money to the priests in the temple, and hanged himself. Alternatively, he burst asunder in a field that he bought for 30 pieces of silver. Okay, so that's the story. Just read just a little bit more. The above account is arrived at by an unconscious amalgamation of the accounts found in the various Gospels. So we're talking Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. All have bits and pieces of this story, but it's not linear like this. And readers, over time, and we're going to discuss that, created a linear, harmonious narrative. Actually, these accounts are inconsistent with each other in many respects, but the non-expert reader does not therefore regard the Gospels as being at variance or as contradicting each other. Instead, he fills in the lacuna of one Gospel from another and adopts harmonizing interpretations where contradictions appear to exist. Okay, let's stop there. So the rest of this book, so it's going to be split, is going to be proof of that, what is the story in all these Gospels, what pieces exist, then how it was put together, and then how it functioned in very destructive ways through millennia. And still functions today. I mean, I saw the film, the movie Jesus and the Black Messiah. It was an amazing film, but it's like, it's still the metaphor. It's still the metaphor. Judas and the Black Messiah is still the metaphor, and it has echoes to a people, to it's a problem. I want to end off. So when I learned this story of Judas, I was like, where have I heard this story before? And because I know my education before that was the Hebrew Bible. I don't call it the Old Testament. I call it the Hebrew Bible. That was my whole upbringing. And I was like, this is familiar. And it is the story of Joseph being sold into slavery by his brothers in Genesis 37. Why? Because who had the idea of selling him into slavery? It was his fourth brother, Judah. And he sold him for 20 pieces of silver. So it's not 30, but it's, So the story of Joseph and his brothers, and Judah selling his brother Joseph, like betraying him, and his father, is a family dysfunctional story that's like, our story. It's the Jewish dysfunctional family story. It's bad, but it's our story. We deal with it. This is what we did to each other, to ourselves. And, it was written much earlier than, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and by different authors, and it has a completely different cultural context. it's just I understand that later Christians read, the entire Hebrew Bible, read Jesus into the entire Hebrew Bible. I get that. And I get that this story has been viewed as parallel to the Judas Iscariot in religious Christian context. I'm not going there. That's a whole other set of problems. I am seeing this story as, this is a Jewish text that was written much before. It has nothing to do, in its mind, in this like Hebrew Bible's world, it has no knowledge of Judas Iscariot. That's my historical reality. And you can argue with that and disagree, but that I think I have really strong foundation for putting it in those terms. Just because I think it's such a beautiful story and it's so parallel. So what's the deal? So the idea is that, and Hyam Maccoby is going to bring it up as well, is that there was a lifting here. Right? It's like, it was a story everybody knew, and it's terrible. It's like the worst thing. It's really the destruction of a family. There was reconciliation. I would argue like a partial in the story. I'm saying as this narrative, as literature. I'm talking about it as literature. That was foundational for a people's like identity and practice and ritual, self-understanding. And there was a reconciliation with the brothers, but not completely. And there was lack of trust that you can actually see. I'm not going to talk about that at all. Just as a summary. So here's the story that I think was, lifted by the authors of the gospel. Lifted, I say. Okay, so where should we start? Okay. So they hate the brothers. There are 12 brothers, 4 wives, and each of the wives have children. And Jacob, who's the patriarch, grandson of Abraham, loves Joseph the best. And he displays this love overtly in front of his other sons, not caring if they're going to be jealous or if they're going to be upset. He makes him a beautiful tunic of many colors, Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, and he wears it all the time. He's a 16-year-old kid, 17. And he's showing off in front of his brothers. Dad loves me, clearly. And he has dreams. He also has dreams that place him at the center of everybody's concern and attention. Everyone's bowing to him in his dreams. I won't go through them. And he repeats these dreams to his brothers, so they hate him even more for his dreams. So anyway, one day, and also Jacob makes him oversee his brothers as shepherds, see if they're doing the right thing. So all of this compounds, and they despise him. So he's going out. Jacob sends Joseph. This is very interesting. I won't go into all the text. It's such a good story. It's a story. It's a real interesting story. Sends him to see how his brothers are faring, tending the sheep. Okay. So what happens? The brothers, saw him from afar, and before he came close to them, they conspired to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes the dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits, and we can say a savage beast devoured him." So covering it up, right? And we shall say, and we shall see what comes of his dreams. But when Reuven heard, Reuven's the oldest brother, he tried to save him from them. So the other brothers are conspiring, and there's all this commentary on who those brothers were. But Reuven, the oldest, is trying to save Joseph from the other brothers who want to kill him. He said, "Let us not take his life." And Reuven went on, "Shed no blood. cast him into the pit out into the wilderness, but do not touch him yourselves, intending to save him from them and restore him to his father. So he's like, just throw him in the pit and he'll die there. Don't kill him with your own hands. And then he intends to come back, bring him out of the pit, and take him home. This is also a very unusual motif of the Hebrew Bible when you hear someone's intention. Just interesting, like, little tidbit. When Joseph came up to his brothers, they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the ornamented tunic that he was wearing, and took him and cast him into the pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it. Then they sat down for a meal. Whew. Looking up, they saw a caravan of Yishmaelites coming from Gilead, their camels bearing gum, balm, and ladanum. I don't know what that is. To be taken to Egypt. So they're merchants, they're traders, these Ishmaelites. And they're going down to Egypt. They're there's all this trade, all this movement up and down the Levant into, Africa. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What do we gain by killing our brother and covering up his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let us not do away with him ourselves. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh." His brothers agreed. When Midianite traders passed by, they pulled Joseph out of the pit. They sold Joseph for 20 pieces of silver to the Ishmaelites. So there's like some confusion in the text. It's confusing. Was it the Midianites? Was it the Ishmaelites? There's a bunch of commentary on this. Different texts, like different scrolls. And it was put together. Who brought Joseph to Egypt. So they sell him into slavery, and either to the Midianites or the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. It was Judah's idea. Judas, right? Does this worst possible thing. So I think that's, again, it's a lifting of this story. What is the worst thing you can think about someone doing, right? That you can attribute a whole, people to, so you can sort of like damn them forever in, worldview, right? You say that, they sold, they for money, betrayed their, what you consider like the Son of God. Whoa, that's the worst thing anyone could ever do, right? Betrayal is actually like a very, very difficult thing. It's something that really is so destructive and damaging because it really affects people's sense of trust, and we need trust. We need trust in the world. We function on trust. We have to have that. And when the people closest to you, right? So it's considered one of the worst things you could ever do. And when you have a politic which requires you to separate, let's say your Christianity from your origin religion, and we're going to discuss that, the book is going to discuss that, you're going to choose the very worst thing that these other people, the foil that you have created, are, right? And that has ramifications for us as Jews for thousands of years. So we're going to discuss this. Thank you for listening. See you soon.